Welcome. As Melissa mentioned, my name is Matt Kirchner. I am president of ATS-LAB Midwest and Mission Learning Systems. Before too long, I will be joined by just some phenomenal panelists and commentators today on our topic of applied AI in education. So when we get to that point, my dear friend Mike Beighley, an absolute innovator and disruptor in education, the superintendent of the Whitehall School District, will be on with me, as will both Britni Walz and Jenny Riggle of LIFToFFS, and we're going to learn all about some really innovative applications for how we can use AI in education today and in the future. I want to take a moment to tee up this whole idea of applied artificial intelligence. When we bring up this idea of applied AI in education, what exactly are we talking about? I want to start by taking us back about 15 years. This was a slide that I used to use in presentations about the exponential economy, about how fast technology was moving in that day and age. Look at this slide. We were talking about things like the iPad and how quickly the camera on the iPad and a 4G network was working inside and outside of the iPad and the speed at which we were able to transmit data. That was the old day of innovation, and we thought that was fast. Let's talk about what is happening today in artificial intelligence. In the year 2022, AI could not do basic math. You could say, what is 7 times 8? It might give you an answer like 54. A year later, 12 months later, in the year 2023, AI could pass the bar exam. We went from not being able to do basic math to passing the bar exam in 12 months. And then a year after that, it was writing working software and explaining graduate level science. And now we're at a point here in March where a month ago, March of 2026, a month ago, ChatGPT released ChatGPT 5.3, and it is amazing how much has changed. These new models make everything before them feel like a totally different era. Now, when we talk about this, we're talking about generative AI, generative pre-trained transformers. We'll get into some of that today, but what we're going to spend most of our time talking about is applied artificial intelligence. What we mean by that is this. Most of us know Jensen Huang. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, by market capitalization, the largest company in the world. Here's what he said in November of last year at the Consumer Electronics Show. He said, AI has been advancing at an incredible pace, and this starts with what we call perception AI several years ago. And then we got to a point where we could understand images and words using artificial intelligence and sounds. And then we moved into generative AI, where we could generate those images and we could generate texts and sounds. He says now we are in the age of agentic AI, AI that can perceive and reason and plan and act. He said, here's where we're going in the future, and this is important. He said, the future is all about physical artificial intelligence. That is the next phase. He said, we'll talk about that tonight back at CES. We are going to talk about that this afternoon. We're going to talk about this thing called the edge to cloud continuum, how what is happening on the edge is being transmitted from smart sensors and smart devices to a control system, to a network, and to the cloud, where these crazy algorithms are gathering all kinds of information and predicting the future. Really cool technology. I want to start my discussion around applied AI by thinking about your smartphone. We talked about the iPad. Now let's talk about the smartphone. Today's smartphone has 23 smart sensors on it, believe it or not. And so you can see up there on the screen all of the different types of things that are being sensed, tracked, the data being acquired and tracked by your smartphone, by your iPhone, your Android, whatever it is that you're using. Here's why this example is important when it comes to applied artificial intelligence. That is because your activity, which are the things that you're doing all day long, are being tracked by these 23 smart sensors and smart devices on your phone. And they are communicating that information to a control system called the smartphone, called the iPhone or the Android. And we are transmitting that via Wi-Fi router, modem, to an internet service provider in the fog, and then up to the cloud. What do we mean by the cloud? Well, let me give you an example. I'm a huge fan of live music. I love going to see live performances. Took this picture at the Shins concert not too long ago. It was amazing. But here's what amazes me about music. You know, if I use Spotify, or maybe you use Apple, or maybe you use Pandora, some other music streaming service, what always amazes me is if I've got it on that autoplay mode, it can always perfectly predict the next song that I want to hear. How does it do that? Well, it does that because it knows everything about me. It knows where I live. It knows my payment history. It knows how old I am. It knows what I listen to. It knows what's on my playlist. It knows who I follow, and it knows what they listen to. It knows who follows me, and it knows what they listen to. It knows what I play over and over again. It knows what I swipe. And using all that information, we can perfectly predict the next song that I want to hear on Spotify. So the reason I love that example is it's relatable. Every single one of us can understand how an app like Spotify or an app like Apple Music is predicting our next step and predicting our interests and so on. Here's the point. Once we understand that continuum, once we understand edge to cloud, our activity all the way up to cloud apps like Spotify and Safari and what's going on there, we start to understand how artificial intelligence manifests itself not just on our smartphone, but in every single vertical within our economy. In manufacturing, we have smart sensors and smart devices at the edge communicating with the cloud and everything in between using programmable logic controllers and computer networks. Guess what? We have the same continuum in precision agriculture and in energy and in healthcare and in food production and in hospitality and in retail and in defense. It doesn't matter what part of our economy we're operating in, that edge to cloud continuum is operating behind it. And this is a great way for us to understand what Jensen Huang means when he talks about physical AI, or what we mean when we talk about applied artificial intelligence. This is the edge to cloud continuum, and this is what we are talking about this afternoon. We see it all over. So I'm a manufacturing guy. I spent 30 years in manufacturing, still involved in manufacturing. I love those examples. This is how we see it in manufacturing. This is a driverless forklift. It literally will drive around a distribution center, a logistics center, a manufacturing operation using artificial intelligence from a company called Auto. And that technology will literally optimize material flow through a distribution center, through a manufacturing environment without a person doing anything. We can have multiple versions of these things working their way around one of those environments. They communicate with each other, they avoid collisions, and they will find the most efficient way to move material around the facility, again, absent any human Another example, we're seeing scanning. So we can scan a 3D part using a 3D scanner, tons of artificial intelligence and edge to cloud technology behind that, and build a CAD file of that exact part. Well, these are my friends at Gray Matter Robotics in California. They are taking a scanner, scanning a production part in manufacturing, building a CAD file or an STL file of that particular production part, and then using that information, that CAD file, and artificial intelligence robot to perfectly surface finish that particular part in lot sizes as small as one. These are just some examples of how we're using AI in the world of manufacturing. And as I mentioned, similar examples in every vertical throughout our entire economy. So the question comes, how do we teach AI to students? And I'll be honest with you, when most people think about AI, and Mike and I are going to talk about this in just a little bit, they think about generative pre-trained transformers, ChatGPT, Anthropic, Claude, Perplexity, all of these different generative pre-trained transformers. Why? Because that's what we're used to. Well, yes, GPTs are part of artificial intelligence, but AI is way more than just generative pre-trained transformers. And so that's why our learning in an educational environment about AI can't look like this picture necessarily. Yes, there's a place for programming and coding, but artificial intelligence is so much more. We have to figure out how we teach the edge to cloud continuum. So just a really quick, like 3 or 4 minute overview of a platform that we're advocating for called Discover AI. This is how we take that world of GPTs, turn it into physical artificial intelligence, and make it come alive in the classroom and in the lab in K-12. Talking a lot about that today. But we walk a student through this whole example that I just shared with you about how Spotify is using their information to perform predictive analytics. And we teach that student about what happens when they press play or when they pause or when they swipe or when they follow somebody or somebody follows them. And then we talk about the different types of machine learning, supervised learning and unsupervised learning, meaning structured and unstructured data, reinforcement learning, where the AI platform gets smarter and smarter and smarter over time just by learning from its own mistakes. How we take that data and find patterns and create patterns so that we can use those patterns for predictability. And then how Spotify uses all of those different types of machine learning and all those different technologies to perfectly predict the next song that that student wants to hear when they are on their music streaming platform. Now we get into the question of, okay, that's cool, but where is this edge to cloud continuum in other parts of the economy? And we walk them through the same examples that you and I just talked about: self driving cars, smart homes, theme parks, advanced manufacturing, defense, energy, and so on. And we get them familiar with very relatable ways for us to use artificial intelligence in the physical and embodied AI realm. And we help the students understand that technology. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. AI is going to totally transform the world of work. We'll be talking about that with Jenny and Brittany here in a little bit as well. And so we need to prepare our students for a world full of artificial intelligence and not to be afraid of it and not to be afraid of, is it going to take my job, but understand how we can work hand in hand in the same way that we can have a teammate at work that's a human being. We can use AI as a teammate at work as well. And we can start to understand why human beings will always be in the loop, why there will always be a human role in this world of artificial intelligence. But it's important for us to understand which of those roles are human and which of those are AI. This is where really exciting. And it's where we take this technology and we make it come alive in the classroom. I'm all about hands on kinesthetic learning. I was always that kid that couldn't sit still in class. If I had had this kind of learning available to me on biotechnology, on autonomous vehicles, brain computer interfaces, autonomous mobile robots, my world would have looked totally different in education. We're teaching kids using Mars rovers. We're teaching them all about drone technology and the sensors and microprocessors and AI and telemetry and drones. Yes, there's some of it that relates to programming and coding and 3D game development, but what about precision agriculture? What about industrial automation and robotics? What about Industry 4.0? We also get into smart sensors and smart devices and smart energy and how we can gather data, whether it's in the on the grid or in a manufacturing environment, and use that data to improve performance. This is the future of education. This is applied artificial intelligence. This is the edge to cloud continuum coming alive in the classroom. And this is what our students are begging for. And that we're doing this particular webinar today on the whole idea of applied AI in education. And now it's my great pleasure to bring our presenters and our guests onto this particular webinar. We're going to start with Mike Beighley. And I can tell you, if you've never heard Mike talk, he is one of the greatest disruptors, one of the most incredible thought leaders and forward thinkers in all of K-12 education, maybe even all of education put together. He's a wonderful, wonderful friend. I know you're going to enjoy getting to know him. First, Mike, it's awesome to have you on, and thanks for spending some time.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, man. I always do. It's just a great time to start talking about what we need to do for kids.
It sure is, and that's that. I'm glad you use those words because really, in the end, we can talk about technology, we can talk about the market, we can talk about AI. This is about students, and you're all about students, and that's why you're such an advocator and such a disruptor when it comes to this whole future of education. So, my first question would be, what have you seen in the last several years that has really inspired you around leading in this age of artificial intelligence?
Well, I think dating back as much as 10 years, Matt, as you know, when we first kind of met each other, I've had some tremendous opportunities to travel the world, spend time in Germany, time in China that I think we'll talk about, multiple visits to schools throughout the US. And one of the most intriguing things was how artificially limiting we were to kids as the adults. We kept putting limits on kids and talking about all the things they couldn't do. So during the course of that, and as we got more and more into the world of AI and start talking about humanoid robots, the impact that things like automation are going to have on the lives of kids, we have to change. We have to start figuring out what the human capacity of each of our kids really is. And then as we got more and more information around artificial intelligence and the impacts that blending AI with the emerging technology, that we could actually meet the individual needs of kids. We've been chasing that for 30 years. My entire career, we've been chasing individualized education. So what do we need to do as we blend now the technology that we know exists for kids? Okay, and I think how quickly we've been able to move away from this allow or ban phase of things, right? We're into the whole how do we teach kids how to use these technologies, these tools responsibly because it is the world they're going to live in.
Absolutely. And the fact that you're talking about the allow or ban, and I agree. I mean, 9 months, 12 months ago, we were debating, are students going to use generative AI to cheat in the classroom? And even in the last 12 months, we're almost not having that debate at all anymore. It's more about how do we prepare students to use AI in an ethical fashion, to use it in a way that is responsible, but also to use it in a way that opens up just these incredible futures for these students. Now, you and I had the opportunity just a moment ago to spend a full week in China in August. We visited 26 technology companies in 6 days. I have said many times it's one of the most transformative weeks of my entire life in terms of what we saw going on in China from an innovation standpoint. And we saw a ton of physical AI, whether it was ASRS systems, the humanoid robots we're seeing on the screen right now. We saw a ton of technology around areas like the robotic dogs. We saw all kinds of AI alive and well in the distribution centers that we were in merchandising. I mean, it was absolutely crazy how much physical AI we saw. Talk a bit, Mike, if you would, about why this whole era of teaching physical AI is so important.
I think the teaching of the physical AI, Matt, is so important because it's going to literally impact every aspect of our lives going forward. And our kids are our next round of leaders. Those are our folks that are going to be managing everything going forward. So I think, some good friends, mutual friends of ours, Jim and Karen Dada, remind me all the time with this conversation around hard skills versus soft skills or durable skills, right? I think it's important to remember that yes, a lot of the hard skills that we're talking about nowadays may be perishable, maybe, but we can still learn durable skills or soft skills while we're learning the hard skills that are going to manage. I think the other thing that China trip told me very quickly is we needed to change our lens in education. We spend a lot of time talking about our juniors and seniors, looking out a year, maybe two. We've shifted our focus to looking at life through our 4-year-olds' eyes. Those kids that
Mhm.
come to us that very first year that will graduate in 2037, 2038. What's that world going to look like? And we need to start transforming that now. But yes, you talk about a transformative experience.
It
I don't
was
know that it was so powerful.
Yeah, it was just incredibly powerful, and just the different technologies we saw. This was like, I've been an advocate for physical AI, Mike, for probably 3.5 years, saying this is where things are going. To hear people like Jensen Wang saying that, to see the technology we saw on this trip in China, absolutely cemented the importance of this topic that we're talking about. Glad you mentioned our dear friends Jim and Karen Dada, absolute leaders, and have given so much of their lives and so much of their energy to the world of K-12 education and education in general. So fantastic that you mentioned them. I know Karen, as a matter of fact, I believe has been through this same e-learning course that we're about to talk about. And 120 students recently go through the Applied AI Learning, the Discover AI Learning course, and e-learning course. It's about 12 to 16 hours. The first pilot for that course, super, super good feedback that we're getting in general. In fact, I get tons of adults that are saying when they see a webinar like this, that sounds really cool for our sophomores in high school or our eighth graders, but can I see it too? Because they learned something from it. Would love to get your feedback on what you're hearing from students when it comes to Discover AI, to the e-learning course, and the feedback that you're getting from them.
Well, you're right. We had our entire 7th and 8th grade student body go through the Discover AI course, and I think the fundamental base it created, one of the things that we're really trying to drill down into is what is a new foundational skill set for all kids, and if they don't have the vocabulary, they don't have a basic understanding of edge to cloud, and how that's going to impact. Again, we've talked a little bit about the physical AI already. It's easy to use chat GPTs or Gemini, jump in and have it write an essay for you or do something, right? That's easy for most of us. I think when we start looking at, though, we try to hold kids accountable for a world that doesn't exist anymore, right? We're talking about Industry 2.0, Industry 3.0 time frames, and that's the approach that we've taken for kids. So I think this becomes such a foundational piece of what baseline information has to be so kids can now evaluate effectively what the rest of the world's going to do for them and what they are going to be able to do with the tools as they continue to develop. So it was really powerful for us, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to do that with all of our kids.
Absolutely. And I hope the kids appreciated it as well. We want to give them this paradigm and this understanding of how the world of AI is going to impact not just the computer side of it or the tele or the smartphone side of it, but the physical, the employment, the career side of it as well. It's interesting. I get a lot of people that ask me, Mike, and I'm sure you hear the same thing. What should we be teaching our kids about Chat GPT? And I kind of chuckle a little bit, and I'm like, they should be teaching us. Believe me, your students know how to engineer a prompt. They know how to ask a generative pre-trained transformer a question and get an answer. Yes, we need to teach the ethical side of it. Yes, we have to teach the responsibility side of it, and make sure that they're recognizing how we can use AI for good and maybe not so good. But it just is important, maybe more important for me than the GPT side. I would say definitely more important is this whole idea of physical artificial intelligence and making sure that students are getting exposure to that and doing it in a hands-on way is the other part that's really important to me. I think I've mentioned so many times that I was always a hands-on kinesthetic learner. I mentioned that when that video was streaming a moment ago. I was always the student that had to be active in my learning. I could not sit still and listen to a lecture. I got through it, and there's a place for that, and there's teachers that do it well. But the truth is, this whole idea of hands-on experiential learning so important. So I would love to hear your reflections on why you're such an advocate for hands-on and experiential learning as well.
Well, I think the experiential piece of this is kids always perform better when they're solving real problems, right? We're seeing that already in I'm sure Brittany and Jenny will talk about it, but we're seeing cultural shifts already in our classrooms where we engage kids at a level either with their hands or in just more active approaches that all of a sudden some of these behaviors that we criticize kids for over and over again, the boredom, the fidgeting, the talking, all of that stuff becomes more constructive. But I think the hands-on piece for the first time ever, kids are going to be able to solve some problems that we thought were unsolvable. And I think the more that we can really focus kids on how to leverage the tools that they have access to, we didn't have access to them growing up. So I think for us as adults to really push forward with our own comfort and understanding that we have to give kids the tools and access to things in an applied nature that are going to solve some problems that we thought were unsolvable and then empower them to go challenge their own thinking, challenge their own, come up with their own questions. We've spent a whole career, many of us, telling kids, don't ask questions, just do what I'm telling you and you'll be fine. Minimal compliance, right? What's the minimum I have to do to get an A or a B or stay eligible to play football? We're
Right.
now starting to really unleash the human capacity of kids and let them solve their own problems.
It goes back to the movie Office Space and the minimum compliance idea and working just hard enough not to get fired, right? And that's not the kind of students that we want. We don't want them just figuring out how to do the bare minimum to get through it. We want them engaged and excited about their learning, not just to get grades and not just to make their way through their education pathway, but to set up themselves for what is waiting for them in the future. I wrote a magazine column like not too long ago, actually several years ago now, I guess, but about the whole idea that all the things I got in trouble for in school, fidgeting, high energy, couldn't wait to get on to the next thing, being maybe overly social, all those things that I got in trouble for in school ended up being worth their weight in gold when I got into the workplace. And those, in many ways, are kind of the fabric that create entrepreneurs. And so you're really unleashing that opportunity for students to be able to, yes, we have to learn how to have professional skills and workplace skills and be able to communicate and be able to follow direction and take direction, but also to imagine a future and, to your point, to create solutions and ideas and solve problems that we've never been able to solve before. I want to give you credit and then allow you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the emerging technology laboratory that you've got there in Whitehall. This is going to blow people away what they're seeing these young people doing in high school. And I will also tell them, and I'm not shy about telling you and everybody else, that the Discover AI platform that we just talked about, what you're about to show them is the inspiration for what we did with Discover AI: autonomous mobile robots, autonomous vehicles, drones, 3D design and fabrication, 3D game development. So as we kind of video here of the great things happening in Whitehall, talk about what students are learning in the ETL.
Well, I think the ETO, like you said, with the help of the Ron and Joyce Wannick Foundation and the folks at Ashley, we've been able to give kids a world class opportunity, the very same equipment that is available in industry to be able to start learning and exploring what is possible. And what we've seen already is kids willing to engage with equipment that makes adults exceptionally uncomfortable. They will go learn on their own they will want to challenge what the capability of things are. You see Otto on the video there, the same one you just showed, the same thing we saw in China, right? The autonomous warehouses that we saw, Otto's moving bots all over the place. I think the what we're starting to really see already in just in year 2 of the emerging tech lab is when we get out of the way of kids and we allow them the freedom and flexibility with some structure and a whole lot of coaching to be able to go find their own passion and then apply that, we're already seeing some tremendous growth in again engagement. And we're seeing, our first year target was, I think, 150 courses to be offered in the emerging tech lab. We ended the year over 1,000. We have 317 individual kids this trimester coming through the emerging tech lab. It's certainly created some growing pains. Our staff folks, Nikki, Christoph, and Alex, are working their tails off over there trying to adjust things accordingly. But to their credit, the kids have engaged and they have really dived into 3D printing. You see the 3D scanning, the modeling, all of those things. But in being able to 3D print something is fun. It's cool. Understanding the slicing software that goes with it in the background of how all of these things work, as you have said several times, from the edge to the cloud piece and what that works on. And then we have fully automated systems. We teach SolidWorks, we teach computer programming, we teach the FANUC backbone, the FANUC robot training programs, the Amatral backbone. So we have unlimited courses. And to their credit, our staff said, we're not going to limit kids to what we can offer in terms of direct learning. We're going to free them up. We're going to provide them the curriculum, the guides, the opportunities to go learn, and then we're going to get out of their way. And it's been exceptionally powerful. It's something we're exceptionally proud of. We got an awful lot of work to do yet. Again, you start going from anticipating 150 total courses during the course of a year to pushing 1,000 kids. That's a whole different ballgame. But I think the paradigm shift has certainly started. The passion we're seeing in kids, the learning capacity in kids, all the things that we criticize them for, of sitting around waiting to be told what to do. The EDU mills that you're seeing there, we had kids learn those before we were trained.
Yep.
We had kids that wanted to jump in, understand how to learn that. So with some some guardrails, right? Not like we just said, here, go. Here's a $30,000 piece of equipment. Go see what you can do with it. But I think at the same time, if we'd have waited till we were 100% comfortable as adults, we wouldn't be anywhere.
Right? You still wouldn't have started, right? And so I think that's a
Exactly.
really good point. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of we have to push ourselves out of the comfort zone. I'm glad you mentioned your incredible teachers that are working there, volunteers as well, some of whom we've already mentioned in this webinar, but just absolutely incredible effort. And look at these technologies. They're all stackable too, by the way. So yes, 3D printing is important, additive manufacturing important, 3D design and fabrication important. All of it's stacking up into whether it's drone technology, creating new parts for a drone, designing them ourselves, the edge to cloud continuum, and advanced manufacturing, all of these different technologies alive and well. I think by now, and having seen this video, our viewers know that Mike Beighley and the folks at the Whitehall School District are incredibly forward thinking. I want to give you just one more opportunity, Mike, to dream a little bit about the future. We've talked about the innovation going on in the ETL, going on in the district. How else do you think AI is going to transform education into the future?
Well, I think it has real potential, Matt, to in some ways compress education. I think our ability to learn content and a personalized environment where every kid is getting everything they need, where they need it, when they need it, is going to, in essence, in some capacities, compress down what we thought was maximum capacity
Mhm.
into an earlier development of those, which then gives kids broader opportunities to engage in things like apprenticeships, work based learning, actual applied learning going through a high school setting. I think we saw in the video reference to SACA, the Smart Automation Certification Alliance. I think being able to say to employers, here, would you like this skill set, right? You to steal your lines, right? To hey, would you like to have this skill set where folks understand fluid power and electricity and basic electronics, electric motors, motor controls? Of course, most employers would say absolutely. And if we can have a certification on top of it, and now we have highly employable kids right out of high school. I think, and then become lifelong learners because we will have access to those things repeatedly throughout the course of our lives. I think that's the future of learning. even more so than the importance of the future of education. I think it becomes the future of learning.
That's a great way of looking at it as we morph into this age of being lifelong learners and figuring out what it means to continually go back to our education, and not just when the time comes, but on an ongoing basis, recognizing that as fast as these technologies are changing, as we suggested at the beginning of the webinar, it's not a time where we can slow down or we can sit or we can take a break. We've got to continue to learn. And this whole idea of lifelong learning in the age of artificial intelligence, super important. And I love that you gave our audience a little bit of a glimpse into the future of education, because everything you just said there and more, Mike, I absolutely agree with. Your leadership has been incredible, not just at the ETL, not just at the Whitehall School District in so many ways, but I want to now transition into another way in which you and others are leading. And that is on this whole concept of liftoffs, because the edge to cloud area, super important. We'll continue to stick to that, but lots and lots of applications for artificial intelligence in education. So now it's time for me to introduce and bring to the stage our next two guests. Jenny Riggle and Britni Walz are great friends doing incredible work in AI and education. You're going to learn how forward thinking these two people are as we continue our conversation. And I want to begin, Jenny, with you. And a lot of our audience have probably maybe been a while since they've stepped foot into a K-12 classroom. And maybe their paradigm of what it looks like is a little bit different than what it is. Maybe not. So how would you say that we're kind of morphing in a bad way in education, and what might be disappointing to some of our viewers, and then also what might be exciting and some of the positive things happening in education? And as I ask that question, I also want to welcome you to the webinar because it's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. We're so excited to be here. I think there's some pictures up on the screen, and I think that for a lot of people, if they were to go into a school today and step into a classroom, they might experience a little nostalgia, right? Like, oh man, so it's exactly like I remember. And I think we have to question that nostalgia and say, across these decades, should it? Are we sure that it should look exactly the same as it does? And I think we need to start to say this really should not be a point of pride, but it should honestly be a point of national concern. And what we know is that the structure of school largely has not changed. It was built around this traditional education system, defined largely by Taylorism of the Industrial Revolution. And there was a point to that. There was a reason, and it was because we needed a certain type of product to come out of our education system. We needed workers who could do the work that was available and that our nation needed. And we need them to be able to do it in a certain way for potentially 40 years and feel proud
Right.
doing that. And because of that, we're still operating in some of those same types of ways, and schools are still organized, as Mike alluded to, around that compliance and that coverage, even though we know that success is something that is completely different. And unfortunately, the bad news is that because of that outdated system, we are seeing students who are graduating with maybe even a 4.0. I'm going to say they quote unquote are winning at school. And they're graduating still with a lack of the skills that we actually need them to have in the future. And that's a
Mm.
travesty of something that we need to start to tackle.
For sure.
So when I think about what people would be surprised about in a good way, though, and why we're so excited to be here to talk about liftoffs, is that even though this traditional system has been in place for decades, and even though it is so incredibly entrenched, what we have found is that there is such a desire and an appetite there for us to make some of these shifts. People inside and outside of the system are feeling that it is not working for our students. It's not working for our teachers. It's not working for our employers, and it's not working for our communities. And across our liftoffs districts, what we found is that when you give educators the support, when you give them the permission, and when you let them see and feel and experience that vision, they can be incredibly innovative. And again, being here talking about AI today, there's a lot of ways in which AI has also made this possible. There's been educators for decades who have wanted to do something different, and our AI and emerging technology tools have opened the doors for us to actually explore that. So when we do this, and I'll talk about this more later, our students are so much more capable than what we have given them credit for. And also, our communities are ready for this change. So something that often surprises people is that in national polls, 71% of Americans are not looking for a tweak to the current educational system. They want someone to propose something completely different. And that's why we're excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, we're excited as well. Over two-thirds of people saying we're ready for something truly disruptive. The point that you said, hey, the current and traditional model of education isn't working for teachers, it's not working for students, it's not working for employers, and it's not working for communities. Other than that, apparently it's working just fine. But if we listen to those stakeholders and 71% of them saying we want some serious change, it is time for that change. And it's also time to invite Britni Walz, who is working so closely with you, Jenny, on this whole idea of liftoffs. I've been absolutely fascinated by the work that you're doing, Brittany. So welcome, and just give us a paragraph or two, if you will, about what liftoffs is all about.
Yeah, I only got a paragraph or 2. No. But yeah, thanks for having us, Matt. It's been great to step in this side by side with you, kind of seeing the manufacturing lens and all of the global experience and how we can kind of take a lot of those life lessons and the data and the fact that two-thirds want something different and what is that difference and how can we make those difference in schools. Liftoffs is honestly just taking a step back and saying we want to reimagine the school system and not just, slam another initiative at teachers or another acronym. We like to acronym our way through education, but really identifying like what are those cracks in the traditional education system and how we've just filled those cracks on this outdated foundation. And so liftoffs is really just about reimagining and kind of stripping the school system down to its roots and its foundation and thinking truly about what is the things that AI are really not good at. AI is really not good at creativity and uniqueness because it's based on predictive text and our prompting abilities. That's not necessarily great at human empathy and relationship building and critical thinking with that collaborative approach. So liftoffs is really about moving beyond that one size fits really no one anymore. I think the average classroom has 5 different cognitive abilities, and that's in 5th grade math. So when
Wow.
you get to 12th grade math, you're looking at literally every child coming with a unique set of skills and cognitive abilities. It's about moving education so that it's personalized, it's meaningful, it's connected to their lives, and more importantly, the future. It's grounded in what we call our 4 core experiences, and it's not a glitzy AI platform or a program. It's we are stepping into the co-design process with our educators, with our students, with our communities to really rethink what is the student and the teacher experience going to be so that we can really reclaim student engagement. We can challenge students. We can have a space where we're developing the skills that students are going to need beyond the traditional pre-K through 12 experience and really connecting students to a path for a purpose.
So looking in that rearview mirror, in traditional education, it was really we had to figure out a way to fit the student into the education model. And what I'm hearing is it's really all about in the future, how do we fit the education model to the student, that the different modalities of learning, different levels of learning, different interests, different styles, all of these things. And I know that you and I share this incredible enthusiasm around creating student learning environments that are specific to the student that allows every single student to thrive. You talked about fixing some of those cracks in the foundation of traditional education. I know Liptops is built on several foundations, and just want to give you an opportunity to talk about emerging technology, corrected learning, project based learning, and inquiry based learning. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So at the heart of a lot of where we kind of ground ourselves is we know this generation of learners is entirely different, right? We're looking at Gen Zers, Gen Alpha. The way they want to learn, the way they need to learn is fundamentally different than the school system is built around. So when we take a step back and we say, who are these learners in our school system? And more importantly, what is this future that we have no idea what it's going to look like when they step into this real world? We need to make sure that we are fundamentally building those experiences for students that are relevant, rigorous, and real. And doing so, we kind of centered around like how can we bring in emerging technology, and it is AI, but there are just so many other avenues when we say emerging technology. There's emerging technologies in the healthcare setting. There's emerging technologies, as we know, in manufacturing. It's about providing that place for those skills to be developed. We really prioritize personalized learning in ways that have never been possible before. So whether that's using an adaptive powered platform like Alex Math or Course Mojo, that's part of it, right? But it's about so much more. When we really think about career connected learning experiences, that's grounding in project based learning and inquiry. They're not just passive consumers. We want to create critical consumers, where they're solving problems and asking meaningful questions. So it could be bringing in problems from a local community member, or we just saw this, a problem from a local business, and having students actually get really creative and innovative in how they approach those problems. Like, you have a problem at your business, let's see if students can solve it, right? So just making it really relevant for kids. And we see that time and time again. It's not just getting kids to do projects, right? Like, that is not what this is about. It's about really rethinking what are the things that we truly want students to know, understand, and be able to do. And then stepping back and saying, how can we connect that to a career? How can we connect that to a learning experience that's greater than we would ever know? But we're getting out of their way as adults, and we're letting them kind of take over that learning journey.
And I'm sure the students love that as well. I mean, you think about the project-based learning, the aspects of, you talk to an employer, they're all like, we need people that can solve problems. We need people that know how to troubleshoot. And they're doing that in real time, and they're doing it in a way that connects them to a career, correct? Connects them to a business, connects them to a local employer in so many ways that is just incredibly, incredibly powerful because it gives them a context for what they're learning. And to our earlier point, reaches every single one of them where they are. I think that's really, in so many ways, Brittany, the future of education. You think about the kind of information that we have about a student, where they grew, where they're growing up, their academic performance, their learning modalities, the information that we might have about their extracurricular activities, their interests. I mean, all of these different things. And we can use all of that data to predict future outcomes. And if we don't like those outcomes, then we can pivot and change our approach in real time. I think that in a lot of ways is the future of AI in education, but would love to hear you talk just a little bit more about how teachers are using artificial intelligence in innovative ways in the classroom, not just the ones that I mentioned, but other ones that I know you've got tremendous experience with.
Yeah, I mean, the use of AI in the classroom can kind of go multiple facets. One of the biggest things that we oftentimes in education have is, like I said, initiative fatigue, where it's like, we know inquiry learning is great, we know project-based learning is great, we know all of these things are so important. Differentiation is one of the biggest ones, right? But for so long, we've been really unable to obtain that, to truly differentiate for 10 different students with their passion, like you mentioned, their career interests, their extracurricular hobbies, their cognitive abilities. It's been literally unheard of. So for the first time, we have this teacher superpower. So a lot of our teachers are simply just taking pictures of their lesson plans, or
Mm.
taking their virtual online textbook, dumping that into your Geminis or your chat GPTs and saying, create this for students in Wisconsin. Create this for students who love Pokemon. Or here's my traditional multiple choice test. Make this into a performance based assessment where my kids are actually showcasing the skills and the attributes, the actual stuff that we want kids to be able to do. I've seen teachers use it just as a thought partner to say, how can I make this more interesting? How can I make this more relevant? They're using AI powered tools for text to speech adaptability within our learning platforms. Just rethinking every part of their day because now they have that superpower. I love an example from my own child. She loves ski racing, she loves skincare, and she loves volleyball. She was learning medieval vocabulary words as a fourth grader. Like, oh, she was having a hard time. So having her teacher actually create a poem using her interest around
Mhm.
skincare, volleyball, right? And creating a poem that she could read then she's like, "Oh, I know what fatal means. I know what rival means." Like, these are ways that we can truly increase or affect, I should say, the student experience with just like a little click of a button.
And meeting her exactly where she is with her interests, learning the same things, right? But in a way that's relevant to her, way more efficient. I absolutely love that. We talk a lot about, we have teachers that'll say, well, I used to be able to assign an article and have a student read the article and then write a summary of the article so that I knew that they got it. And now they're just putting it into a GPT and having the GPT do the summary and handing it in as their homework. What are they learning? And the answer is, well, they're not learning anything. And really the onus and the responsibility to fix that is on the part of the teacher in so many ways, or at least the the learning environment in the district in which they're working. And so now you're talking about, okay, how can we use artificial intelligence for the benefit of the students? I love the whole idea of having this teacher superpower so that we can benefit the kind of kids that we see in the pictures that are up on the screen right now. As Mike mentioned early on, this is really all about the students to begin and to end. We can, as adults, have great ideas, but it's really about what abilities and understandings are we instilling in our young people. To that end, I would love to hear a little bit of the student perspective and talk a bit, if you would, how AI is advancing personalized learning for your students.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that kids crave is feedback. Kids want feedback. It's part of this generation. Like we all do, even as adults, but kids now more than ever, they need that instantaneous, right? They're used to getting those notifications, that instantaneous feedback. So what you're going to see here is just some data. This is from a middle school social, or excuse me, ELA teacher in Whitehall, and she used the adaptive power of Course Mojo. It is a AI powered platform. The exemplars are written by a human. It overlays to our greenlit educational curriculum, so our ELA curriculum. And what she's using it for is really to provide that in the moment, real time feedback for students. You can look it out at 24 kids, and to be able to provide that level of feedback in detail on student sentence structures, what they're making meaning from the reading and the writing about. Like it is virtually impossible to do that. But AI is actually allowing us to rethink what's possible in education. So again, it's moving education away from something that's done to kids to something where students are actively a part of the educational experience. We had teachers building gems within Gemini, and students are learning how to take their projects, their writing, and actually upload it into these specialized gems to get like instantaneous feedback, and then take that feedback and make it their own. I always tell teachers, if we're living in a world of obviously generative AI, so if AI can do your child's assignment, assessment, can answer your kids' questions, we are asking the wrong questions. We are giving the wrong assignments and assessments. So, in terms of the student perspectives, they just really allow having a seat at the table and actually getting to talk about, like, what am I experiencing? How am I experiencing? With liftoffs, it is not a program. It is not a, like, you have to do this. Like, we have 15 districts right now, 16 starting more recently. And it's not a one size, again, fits each district. It is truly unique and adaptive. Same thing, our students. We like to have empathy interviews with our kids, listen to them. But I think really one of the big things is students now actually have complete ownership of their learning. They see themselves as capable learners who can track and monitor their own growth because they can see the data in real time. They can see the feedback in real time. So it's actually meaningful for them.
And Jenny, this is really important. I think what Brittany's saying is that we look to the future, and students are they're taking their own agency and having their own impact on their learning pathway, what they're learning, how they're learning it, and so on. Every student career path is going to look different as well, right? I mean, there was a time when we said you might have as many as seven career changes over the course of your lifetime. And I know there's new research around that topic. Tell us, what are you hearing now in terms of once a student leaves high school, completes their traditional education journey, because we're all going to be lifelong learners. What is the career path of a student look like today versus maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because I feel like our just entire concept of the word career is going to become this incredibly fragmented experience when we compare it to that traditional idea. And a lot of the research estimates are landing somewhere between 20 to 27 different careers across multiple industries, some of which may not even be invented yet. So the reality is not just this idea of career or job change, but it's going to be constant change. So we need to help our students not just choose the right job one time upon graduation, but grow an incredible set of marketable skills in which they're absolutely ready for anything. So I know we've talked a little bit, it's come up about perishable versus durable skills. And we're at an important point right now where there is a philosophical discussion about this. Those perishable skills are those skills that might be tied to a specific task or tool or job. They might become outdated as technology or industries change, not making them not important, however. And then those durable skills that are going to transfer across jobs and careers and industries. So I think we have to consider consider this idea that perishable skills are likely to get you into the workforce, but durable skills are the things that are going to keep you in the workforce over time. And when I think about like how this really plays out for our students, I think of just examples. Brittany and I were talking about jobs we had when we were growing up, right? My husband spent his teenage summers laying asphalt, full of perishable skills that he is never going to use again. But there were a whole bunch of durable skills that he acquired during that experience that he continues to use every day in his current career and that he'll continue to use forever. So when we're thinking about like why this matters now, AI is increasing at this like increasing the speed at which perishable skills are going to potentially fall off. So we need to make sure that we are rooting an education system in something that is absolutely going to outlast all of those perishable skill changes. So at Liftoffs, as you see on the screen, we're really leaning into this idea of emerging technology enhanced competency-based education. And there's a difference there because we're really thinking about three different types of competencies that get at both a mixture of those perishable skills and those durable skills that our students are going to need. We're leaning into academic competencies, durable skill competencies, and emerging technology competencies. And it's a mix and it's intentional because we're preparing our students for a lifetime of learning, adapting, and contributing to a world that is absolutely changing.
I love the way that you put that. These durable skills are certainly perishable ones are the ones that are going to get you the job. Durable skills are the ones that are going to last you a lifetime. Both of them very, very important. But to your point, as we see careers in the world of work changing as fast as it's going to, making sure we have those great durable skills is going to be really, really important. Before we kick it back over to Melissa for audience questions, Jenny, I want to just ask one more question. What are you hearing about the student experience from the students that are engaging in liftoffs and the ETL and the different incredible work you're doing? What
Yeah, and I just want to say really quickly that if you read the news right now, there's a lot of worry out there among parents and community members because we see a lot, just a huge flux of articles that are extremely negative about our current generation of students. They're less capable or less independent. I've even recently seen AIs making them the dumbest generation, and I just feel like this is the wrong conversation. It's
right?
positioning our students in a light that is extremely underserving for them and undeserving for our entire community. And it overlooks this really important truth that we are currently measuring students inside structures that actually limit what they can show us. So when we're thinking about how engagement has changed in liftoffs, it's because in our liftoffs classrooms, we are seeing that those three kind of new R's that Britt talked about with being relevant in real world, students are more persistent. They are more capable. They can push forward. We're seeing them take risks and recover more quickly from mistakes in these types of environments. And I know for Britt and I, we are just brought to tears so many times in our classrooms because we see that these students are incredibly capable learners. They're incredibly capable problem solvers. And all of the employers out there, you should be excited about what these students can eventually bring to us as long as we cultivate a certain type of structure and experiences that are going to allow our students to truly fulfill their entire potential.
Watching these students and having them bring you to tears, I think that answer might have brought a few audience members to tears as we think about this incredible future available for our students and the incredible value they can add, whether it's moving right from high school into the workforce or whatever path they take thereafter. Just incredible these things the right way. And speaking of handling things the right way, Melissa, I feel like we've handled this webinar so far really, really well. Put a bunch of great stuff in front of our audience. I know we're getting great questions and would love to hear what we're hearing from the audience and let our panelists here, our guests answer those questions.
So, got all our panelists up here and some great questions. We're going to get through as many as we possibly can, but I'm going to start with the ones that were first submitted. I'll throw out Tom Martin's comment. Thank you, Tom. But Tom says, not a question, but Mike and TVC 2.0 is challenging all of us in Wisconsin to step up, to 2026 and beyond. Continue, Mike, to be that beacon of inspiration for all of us. And so then our first question, I'm actually going to direct to Mike as well. So this is from Patrick, and Patrick says, to what extent will applied AI education remain equitably accessible rather than limited by cost or monetization barriers?
I think that's one of the most powerful things we're seeing is it is relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of the things we're doing. Certainly the ETL itself had a cost with it, but the programs that we're seeing and using in our general overall instruction are relatively inexpensive. Being able to meet every one of those kids where they are on top of that, I think it is more so equitable than anything we're currently doing. I think that's the piece. There's this misnomer that this is exceptionally expensive, okay? Or that you need an entire lab full of equipment to start this process. You don't. You need something. You need an idea, a concept, a willingness to really engage, and then you need some stuff. And you could build your way into then what the rest of that is. And we've seen no shortage of willingness of folks to support a different vision, as Jenny said. 71% want something different. So I think that's the counter to the equity claim, is I do think it becomes even more equitable.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate that comment. The next question comes from Catherine. And Mike, you can touch on this if you would you like, and then I'd like Matt to step in as well. Catherine says the Emerging Technology Lab is very impressive and inspiring. I'm wondering if whether there are any biotechnology related instruments.
I think the biotech side is something we really want to get into. We are the closest thing we have so far isn't necessarily in the ETL. It's what our ag program is doing around automation inside the greenhouse, those types of things, in what they're looking at in terms of the future impacts to food and to agricultural process in general. But and we're diving into some of those things, but that's kind of the next on the list for us. The biotech piece, especially related to the ETL. I think there are things happening in science, there are things happening outside of the ETL, but specifically there, that's one of the next things on the list.
Well, and Melissa, to add to that, I'm really glad that question came up because the truth is that you think about this market spaces that are being affected and innovated most rapidly in this age of edge to cloud, and biotech and healthcare are right there. And you think about the sensors we use to monitor, whether it's vital signs or an individual's health, their activity, whether they're in a healthcare institution or facility or they're at home, being able to send that information to monitoring systems up to the cloud where technology like Epic and Cerner are alive and well, and using predictive analytics to make sure that we're giving people the absolute best quality of care. I would say the closest thing in the ETL and in the Discover AI platform would be, and I'd point back to that video, you saw the student with the brain control interface, and with the hand, the NeuroMaker hand, and all the sensors that go along with that. And we're really teaching the fundamentals of sensor technology and edge to cloud in biotech and healthcare. To Mike's point, so many additional ways that we can go with that, and really looking forward to the future of innovation in biotech as it comes to teaching it in high school and every level of education.
Awesome. Thanks to both of you. We'll have time for one more question before I pose that one. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions. What we will do is send a copy of this webinar as well as contact information for all the organizations involved. So if you want to reach out, have more questions, or interested in implementing the Liftoff program or something like the ETL within your own district, you can get those conversations going, and we'll have more about Discover AI as well. So I think this last question is a fabulous one in the age of AI, and I'll pose it to it came up during our liftoff section. So any concern about how much screen time students are participating in?
Yeah, I can take Jenny and I can both kind of take that. I think that is an absolute like a concern. One of the things we always talk about is passive versus active use of technology. If that piece of technology, typically we're seeing one-to-one devices is the typical technology that parents, community members are concerned of. If that is just a replacement of paper pencil, if it's a replacement of student collaboration, if it's a replacement of hands-on learning, then it's really not an appropriate use of technology anymore. And that's really what that we foundationally build upon. When we talk about screen time and the use of adaptive powered platforms, students are really on that platform for less than 20 minutes, maybe total in a class period, in your 4 course. So when you do that math, you're talking less than really talking less than 2 hours on a screen, for the intended purpose of academics. And when you take a look at that reason and the use of it, they're receiving what they need when they need it versus heads down as a passive participant in their educational experience. So it's not a matter of screen time. It's a matter of how are we actually leveraging that screen to provide that really truly intentional educational experience for our kids.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. That was a great way to wrap that up. Matt, I'll let you make any final comments and then we can wrap up for the afternoon.
Well, terrific job, Melissa. And I want to start out by thanking our just incredible guests, Mike Beighley of the Whitehall School District, of course, the amazing advocates for liftoffs, both Britni Walz and Jenny Riggle. As our audience can tell, it's just absolutely amazing innovation happening in the western part of Wisconsin. We can model incredible innovation in education after what we are seeing here today. I was so fascinated by what we learned about applied AI, about AI in the classroom, AI as a tool for teachers, the way it's changing the student experience, and the way it's transforming what we're producing for the benefit of our communities and for our employers. Really, really exciting time, in my opinion, to be in the world of education. And finally, I want to thank our audience. You're on this webinar, you're tuning in because you're interested in the future of education. You're doing incredible work. You are changing the lives of your students in your communities. So thank you. Can't thank everybody enough for being a part of this great day. My name is Matt Kirchner. I'm president of ATS-LAB Midwest and Mission Learning Systems. Thanks so much for joining us.